My father sued my sister after selling her a failing business.
That's why you don't mix family and business.
So, a bit of backstory. My parents got divorced 33 years ago. Oh, and at that time, they both owned several houses. When they separated their assets, my mother got the home she lives in now, and my father got the home he lives in now, but he tried to still take the home she lives in by not paying the mortgage payments and not telling her he hadn't paid the mortgage.
Stinky!
Moving in silence, but this guy is not a G. This guy is a S because he stinks. By the way, this comes from user Lisa Skadell, and you can submit your stories on the r/OK Storytime subreddit. So, had it not been for my godfather loaning my mom the money to get the payments up to date, my father would have put my mother and his 3 kids out on the street. Fast forward 28 years later, my father owned his own business, and he was looking for someone to buy it, and so my sister offered to buy it from him. They agreed on price and signed the contract. Now, here's the rub. The business was actually a business that was losing customers because it is a flailing industry, and my father never told my sister that. My sister is one of the hardest workers I know, and she put everything she had into this business, and nothing she was doing was working. And that wasn't because she wasn't doing the right thing. It was because the business in and of itself was a dying medium for that industry. During the course of all of this, after my father had finally retired, they got into an argument about a financial matter in dealing with the company, and my father was completely disrespectful in the way he handled it towards my sister. He did that in front of her employees. My sister stopped talking to him at that point, and over the next couple of months, despite my sister's extensive hard work, the company went under, and my sister had to close the business after it had been open for 38 years. My sister was devastated by this because not only did she put all of her hard work, her blood, sweat, and tears into it, but also put all of her financial resources, which meant that she was financially devastated as well. Dude, and the dad's just like letting this happen. So, clearly because the business closed, my sister could not continue to pay my dad's payment she was paying him for his business. Then she found out that the business had already been on a downward spiral, and in fact, my father had taken money out of his own account to put into the business because he knew it was dying when he sold it to her. He literally scammed his own daughter in the sale, for lack of a better way of saying it. Because she stopped paying him, he decided that he was going to sue her in court with a judge and everything. Now, for context, a few years before all of this happened, my mom had gotten sick and gone to the hospital, and at the time I lived across the country, and my brother lived across the country as well, and the only one who lived in the same state was my sister. My mother was afraid that if something happened to her, we wouldn't get the house, so she put the house in my sister's name since my sister lived the closest. The house was still in my mother's name as well, but my sister's name was added to it. After my mom got out of the hospital, she never got around to changing it. So when my father started threatening to sue, my sister went through her assets and realized that my mother's house was still in her name and switched it back over to just my mother's name. In our state, however, we have a law that if you think someone fraudulently switches the asset out of their name in order to avoid being sued for it, you can sue them for that asset still. And it's up to them to prove that it wasn't fraudulently transferred. I swear, if the dad gets away with some legal effery here, I'm gonna be mad.
If he has a good enough lawyer, he could do that.
Yeah, where it's like, oh, well, now you're transferring the house out of your name so that I can't sue you for those assets. And it's like, well, first of all, they're not mine.
And the sister's doing everything out of her good heart.
A lot of lawyers got to be psychos because it's like, how could you represent that guy? How could you represent, yeah, I'm trying to sue the house out from under my family that I abandoned, and I also sold them a poison pill business that failed.
Dude, it's all about this, man.
It's all about the do-re-mi. So, when my father decided to sue my sister, he added my mother's house onto the lawsuit as one of the things he wanted. He didn't sue my sister for the house that she owns in her name with her husband in a whole nother city. She sued her for a house she hasn't lived in over 25 years and a house that she has not put any money into ever in her life. Now, when he first filed the suit, I thought he was just trying to force my sister to talk to him because I couldn't imagine any parent, let alone my parents, actually suing their child. But he actually went through with it. He initially told me that he was suing for my mother's house because the lawyer told him he had to sue for all of her assets. And since my mother's house had been in her name, he had to sue for that as well as her house. But then I found out he wasn't suing her for her house. He was suing her only for my mother's house. He's still mad that he didn't get my mom's house 33 years ago when they got a divorce. So mad that he lost in that case that he decided to go after her house the first chance he got. And this was it, 33 years later. What a just pathetic, sad little man.
Having that much resentment, impeccable.
The even more messed up thing is that when I found out he was going after my mother's house, I myself told him, if you go through with this lawsuit and you win my mother's house, you will take her house away from her. I will never forgive you. I will never talk to you again, and you will lose me. And losing me will also mean you lose your grandchild, your only grandchild. So you need to think about whether or not it is still worth it to you. And he still went through with it. Of course he did, girl. He doesn't care about you guys. What do you mean?
You guys were only made in the purpose of somehow getting that house back.
He was like, oh, you're going to remove yourself? I won't have to hear you ever again? Nice. You should have said that earlier. I would have sued you way faster. Crazy. He still went through with it knowing that he would not only lose my sister, but me as well. He filed this lawsuit 5 years ago, and they just got through going to court. So for the last 5 years, he's forced his daughter, his princess, his baby girl, to suffer under the weight of knowing that her father, A, screwed her over, and B, was putting money before her, and C, apparently felt no real remorse or sadness to hurting his own child, emotionally, mentally, and financially. The worst part is he didn't just teach her that. He taught all 3 of his kids with this one act. He did all of this because he thinks that even though he got everything in the divorce, with the exception of primary custody of us kids and the one house, that he is entitled to take my mom's house after 33 years of her living there.
We're going to get back to the story, but Sam, you have a copious amount of something.
What, John?
X's.
I have like 4 or 5 or 6.
I heard of 6 with a 0
All
behind
right,
it.
that 60 number, comes from somewhere else.
Where does that come from?
It comes from our OK Storytime membership.
Yeah, that's freaking right. We have 60 plus hours of exclusive live streams on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
And it's only $5 a month, so go to the link in our description, youtube.com/OKOP show/join.
Join a club almost as exclusive as Sam's X's. Well, let's get back to the story.
Putting all of her time and energy into making it a home for us kids and putting her own money into improving it and her paying off the mortgage on her own as a single mother while raising 3 teenage children on what would be considered poverty wages today. We grew up in the late 80s, early 90s. He hasn't put a dime into that property since 1988. And yet he somehow feels like he's entitled to take it away from my mother without even caring about the damage it would do to his own children. So, really quickly, this is not your father. This is a monster. This is the devil in human clothing. Like, it sucks that it had to, like, crystallize and become apparent to you in this way, but, like, this guy was always this guy, which can be a hard thing to stomach, I think.
I think what hurts the most is if I was the wife and this is who I married turned out to be.
Can you imagine being this guy's partner now and finding out, wait, you're doing what?
Like weaponizing his own kids to get your house.
Well, and you know how some people have some idea in their head that it's okay to mistreat your kid if they're not your biological kids, like a stepchild or foster child or an adoptive child, which I think is disgusting in its own right, but there are people out there who actually believe that. So for those out there who actually believe that it's okay to mistreat your child if they're not your bio child, I say this. It's not like we're like his stepchildren or foster children or children he adopted or any other random crazy excuse that some people try to use to justify their own abuse of their children. We are his biological flesh and blood, and there's no denying it because we look very similar to him and his family. I don't know. I feel like you kind of have to be a sociopath to do this. You know, like just the remorseless. You don't care the effect that it's going to have on your kids. All you care is that you're going to win and that you're going to get the house.
Would you say narcissist?
A lot of sociopaths are narcissists, yeah. Actually, I think all of them are. But not all narcissists are sociopaths. But all sociopaths are narcissists. I just can't stop thinking what kind of sick lump sues their own kid. There's an update. Let's just get into it. I commented on this down below, but I thought I'd add this update. A lot of people here have said that my sister needed to do her due diligence in examining the business. My sister did examine all of the business records for the last 10 years, and she had a lawyer go over the contract with a fine-tooth comb. It wasn't a matter of her not doing her due diligence. It was a matter of the business records that she was given were very different from the business records that held the actual information necessary. For lack of a better way to say it, he cooked the books, which that is how you say that. And that's also illegal.
Yeah, absolutely. Could you do a countersue?
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer, but I would say that if the business was sold to you with like false accounting information, then yeah, it's probably grounds to completely nullify whatever agreement you guys had to pay for it. Anyway, for those wondering about the outcome, she actually did file a countersuit for him selling her a business that was unviable.
Hire me for any of your business conflicts. You need a lawyer, hire me.
Riley the lawyer.
Dude, with me and ChatGPT, I can do anything.
So she was able to prove in court that the business was failing before he sold it to her, and that the equipment he sold her was equipment that he had bought 20 years ago and was no longer usable when it came to the technology of today. Also, I was already pretty sure that no jury worth their salt would give him a house that my sister never put a dime in and hadn't lived in for over 25 years, especially when he wasn't going after any of her other assets, and I was right. When they got to the court, my sister told the judge and the jury that she didn't want anything from him in her countersuit. She didn't want money, and she didn't want anything from him but for this to be over. He told the court and the jury, but he just wanted my mother's house in lieu of the $300K my sister owed him for the business.
$300K?
Hey, businesses are expensive, brother.
Dude, you just made her basically bankrupt, and now you're trying to get $300K?
Scumbag University, and the dean of Scumbag University is this frickin' guy. This pathetic excuse of a human being. This sack of rotten vegetables. So, my father lost his lawsuit. My sister won her lawsuit and was given $0 as that's what she was asking for.
Stop being a saint. Get some money out of this. Girl.
I would have asked for a little bit of my money back.
Yes, at least.
I think her asking for nothing is part of what made her have a slam dunk case. Because the dad was trying to be like, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, dude, I don't know. I just want this to stop. Can we please make this stop? I don't even want money. So he permanently lost one daughter, and the other one, myself, is seriously questioning whether or not I want to talk to him ever again. Over the last 10 years, I've maintained a relationship with my father, but not because it's what he wanted, but because it's what I wanted. Now I just don't know if that's something I want anymore, which I would hope that you don't want that anymore. I don't know if I want to be around the kind of person that could sue his own child, and there is a second update, but first.
So my okay story time is I have a family member, is like an uncle. His own kid stole like $80K, probably $100,000 from him, opening up credit cards in his name and like expedited a lot or like exploited a lot of people's finances. The dad had to go through and sue him through this because he didn't want this to happen to another family member where that kid would manipulate another family member. I say, don't be around the dad anymore, because if he's willing to do it to his most hardworking daughter and con her into buying a failing company, you should have nothing to do with that man. You warned him. You go through this, you will never see your grandkid. What do you do? What was that? I didn't hear anything. Oh, wait, I actually don't even care. Never mind. No, do not be near him. Be done.
You mean you'll stop yapping at me and I get to take your sister's money and I get the house? So, update number 2. First of all, I want to thank everyone for their comments and their concerns, regardless of whether or not I agreed. You took time out of your day, and it's truly appreciated. For those who were wondering, I did try to have a relationship with my father to some extent again after telling him exactly how I felt about what he did, and making it clear to him that those were my feelings and they weren't going to change. Unfortunately, my father is my father, and I ended up not being able to put aside what he had done from who he is. Basically, at the end of the day, what he had done is directly a result of who he is. Dude, thank God you realized that, because he's a trash man and you don't need him around.
And this story's almost over. I wish we had more to read.
It is almost over. And I'm just going to tell you right now, if you don't want it to end, you can go find full episodes with stories like this. All you got to do is go to Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts, and you just got to search OK Storytime. And once you search OK Storytime, you will have thousands of hours, days upon days worth of listening to do.
I think probably like 3 or 4 months. Solid.
I've stopped talking to him for the time being. Ironically, the thing that got me there was an argument over lettuce. Basically, he wanted to give me lettuce that I would never use, and I repeatedly told him I would never use it, but he kept insisting that I come over and get it. OP, that is a very weird reason for that to be the thing that made you cut off your dad, who scammed your sister out of 6 figures. Anyway, but at the end of the day, I realized basically that at my emotional state right now, even if I wanted to have a relationship with him, I can't, because I'm too angry, hurt, and disgusted by what he did. And he doesn't deserve to have a relationship with you, OP, because he's a scamming piece of crap. I'm a person who used to believe that family was everything, and I don't anymore because of his actions. And that is devastating to me. So I just believe that right now I'm better off not talking to him. I want to thank you again for your kind words and your caring concern. And that is the end of that story. Hopefully you continue to like slowly realize like, oh, there's so much more than the lettuce problem. That really the core issue is that your dad is a scumbag who doesn't value his relationship and his bond with his family and his children, and would rather, at the moment it becomes advantageous to him in any way, throw you under a bus and watch it roll over you. That's what he would rather do. And he'd be like, sick, I'm about to get a fat insurance payment from that bus company. Please don't. Don't reconnect with your dad. He would throw you under a literal bus, not metaphorically, like really.